Today I'm sitting down with Dr. Kazuto Suzuki. He's the director of the Institute of Geoeconomics and my boss. And today we are going to discuss Japan's perspective on the election in the United States. So, Professor Suzuki, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I'm not trying to be too bossy against you.
Well, thank you for that. Okay, it's been said once, it's been said a million times, and it'll be said a million times more, Moshi Tora. What if Trump? And this isn't just a slogan that you hear in think tank meetings. You don't just see it in newspaper op-eds. This is something that the Japanese government seems to be taking very, very seriously. More so than in other elections, at least some of the things that I've noticed myself, maybe you as well. Is it fair to say that the Japanese government is taking this election, this US election, unusually seriously?
Well, I think it's not unusual, although we are taking it seriously, but we take all the American presidential election in particular seriously. So I think this is not an exceptional case. Probably if you compare to countries and allied countries like in Europe, I think they are taking this seriously. But people think that this presidential election is something different. But I think this is, in Japan, people taking it as one of those major events that may have a significant implication for the security of Japan and the economic relationship with the United States. And I think this is, we always pay a close attention to the presidential election. But, and I don't think that this is so unusual that we are paying attention. Probably Moshitora became a catchphrase because because of the Trump characteristics, but also because of his sort of a position of anti-democratic behavior and particularly the anti-alliance behavior. So-called the America First policy, and we are trying to see, the evolution of the Trump policy from the first term. So probably that's how we regard this presidential election unique. But it was interesting that even the sort of a failed attempt of assassination of Trump did not. Well, it was, of course, a headline in a few days, but not really, consistent of this attention to the assassination per se. But immediately it switched to the attention to the Biden's withdrawal, and the Harris became as a successor. So yes, we pay attention too, but we are not so sharply focused on the Trump.
Okay. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned Trump's first administration, and it's a little unusual because the challenger to the current administration has actually once been president themselves. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed in conversations and events throughout town is there's a certain kind of confidence that Japan handled the Trump administration the first time around fairly successfully. And there's also a sense that falls out from that. We did it once, we can do it again. So I guess two-part question. One, did they handle the Trump administration, quote unquote, successfully? Was that a win for Japanese diplomacy? And two, can they do it again if Trump wins?
Right. So the overall evaluation of what happened in the first term was that it was a combination of two things. One, Trump was the first timer outside of Washington, D.C. He doesn't know anything about diplomacy and how to deal with the allies. Shinzo Abe was a veteran politician. He has an experience. He has a character that goes with Trump. And he loves golf as well as Trump. So the both individuals get together very well. And Trump needed Shinzo Abe as the sort of a mentor, advisor for his behavior internationally. Although, he is not doing everything according to what Abe said, but I think Trump feel comfortable working with Abe, and therefore he didn't take a very harsh stance against Japan. So that's the one reason. The second reason is it's structural. I mean, United States, the rivalry between China and United States. Japan is strategically located next to China, and we do have the largest, bases in U.S. bases in East Asia. And I think Japan is indispensable ally, and for the security posture against China, Japan, particularly the bases in Okinawa, are quite critical for the United States. So even I think there was a sort of a cozy relationship between Trump and Putin. So the European front was much easier. Therefore, the NATO was not so important to Trump. But the U.S.-Japan alliance is more significant in terms of its strategy against China. So probably I think that's the source of confidence in Japan, that we are a strategic partner to the United States, and United States cannot discard us. I mean, we are in a position that we can have a sort of a leverage against Trump.
So the second part of the question is that confidence going to carry over to a second Trump term? Because you talked about Shinzo Abe, he's off the scene, obviously. We have a new prime minister, and I know you're not supposed to date your podcasts, but we're in the midst, or about to be in the midst, of a national election in Japan, which may or may not weaken, strengthen, I don't know, but just keep the question simple. Will Ishiba have the same kind of, Ishiba Shigeru, the new prime minister of Japan, will he have the same kind of political capital, the same kind of strong base that Abe had to sort of repeat Abe's routine, or are we back to the possibility of a revolving door prime minister?
I think the reason why I said the two reasons in the first term is that we don't have this characteristic, the character factor. We no longer have Abe, and Ishiba is totally different. He was an arch enemy of Abe.
Yeah.
So I think two politicians are in opposite position.
Yeah.
Ishiba is more, let's say, traditional and less flexible. He's more like an opposition party within the party. So he was. We are not expecting that Ishiba can handle Trump well. Nevertheless, I think the second part of my reasoning in the first term, as a strategic location, I think this hasn't changed. Whoever comes as a prime minister or whoever is in the White House. So as long as we locate in this real estate, I mean, the real estate is the location is the most important part when it comes to the geopolitical relationship. So I think no matter who becomes as a prime minister for the next election, I think it's not going to be so it doesn't make that difference, and I think it will be possible that if we can handle properly, then Trump may not. Trump needs to respect Japan to a certain extent.
So let's turn to President Biden and his same administration, Vice President Kamala Harris. One of the charges that you get levied at Biden is that in terms of international economics, he's pretty much the same as Trump.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more refined in the policy approach, but in terms of outlook, in terms of overall posture, what you're seeing, from one administration to the next really isn't that different. And so therefore, presumably, if Kamala Harris wins, you would not see much change either. Is that fair?
Well,
from Japan's perspective.
From Japan's perspective, I think there are slight differences. I mean, they both heading to the same direction, but I think the methods that they're going to employ is going to be a little bit different. The Biden administration were more or less, focusing on the law, for example, CHIPS Act, the IRA. There are some legal tools and industrial policy, which is more of a spending policy,
Right.
To encourage more investment in the United States, creating more jobs. Whereas Trump has a fascination about, I don't know where it comes from, but he has a fascination about the tariff. So he
I
might
don't
have.
remember the last president to cite William McKinley and
Yeah.
his tariff program.
Yeah.
He's the first as far as I know. but
Yeah,
I digress.
or in the Congress, Smoot Hallway, these kind of, traditional.
I've heard members cite Smoot-Hawley before, but as a warning.
Yeah.
As in, you don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
Trump shows up and says, hey, maybe we should do Smoot-Hawley again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's a little different.
yeah, so that's different. But I think there are. My point is that the Trump has a fascination about the tariff.
Yeah.
And he wants to, protect the U.S. market from any foreign goods. So that eventually encourages people to invest in the United States. So I think they eventually, both are going to the same direction, to encourage more investment, inward investment, inbound investment to the United States. But the policy tools that they use is going to be different. Trump tariff policy is going to increase anyway the market prices, and then it will incur the inflation, which is not actually which is basically against what he says all the time. And the Harris, if she just inherits the Biden policy and then moving on, continue to spend more, then that is financially or the fiscally unsustainable. So I think both are not going to the sort of they are not bringing the American economy to the paradise. But I think I think which is worse is, I don't know. I mean, but from Japanese perspective, Trump tariff barrier is going to be very serious because from many Japanese companies regard the United States as the largest market in the world, and then the export to the United States has been always the major source of revenue for Japan. Of course, there are lots of investment. Japan is the largest investor in the United States, so we've been investing in the United States, but are we going to do more? And especially, I think the future of the USMCA or former NAFTA. Trump is saying that he's going to raise the tariff against the Mexican, the imports from Mexico. And can you do that? I don't know. But I think this sort of a tariff policy of Trump will have a lot, will change the behavior of the Japanese companies. The Harris policy or Biden-Harris policy of these, spending policy and industrial policy may be beneficial for the Japanese companies, but this is also very competitive. I mean, the Europeans, Koreans, everybody else is now investing in the United States, and I think Japan is a little bit behind all the races of this sort of investment race and getting tax credits and the subsidies. So I don't know if Japan is in favor of that Harris spending policy or the Trump tariff policy. So I think neither is very happy policies for us, but we see that difference.
So speaking about not very happy policies, you mentioned one of the points of things like the IRA was to encourage investment in the United States. Well, we have a very high-profile example of Japanese investment in the United States that's hit a brick wall, or should I say a steel wall, in Western Pennsylvania with Nippon Steel's proposed purchase of U.S. Steel. Now, just backing up so that our listeners understand, this is up for review on national security grounds by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, who is currently checking to see that the purchase does not pose a threat to U.S. security. But somehow we all Biden has come out against it. Trump has come out against it. Harris has come out against it. I want to give my lawyer colleagues in Washington, D.C. some credit. I don't want to say it's just a pro forma review, but, we all kind of recognize that there are political concerns here rather than, security concerns.
Definitely, yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to avoid editorializing too much, but first thing is there's a circle you've got to square somehow, which is how can you encourage foreign investment in the United States while also being extremely rigorous. Now, maybe Nippon Steel is an outlier. I don't know. It is a particularly unique case for a whole bunch of reasons. But it seems a little bit contradictory from the outside. You're trying to square a circle that I don't know you can do. Yeah. And for other Japanese companies, maybe throughout the region, watching this, you have to be a little bit skeptical because maybe the investment, the purchase you have in mind may not be as politically sensitive as Nippon Steel's, but you also have to look at it and wonder, okay, if you can void this purchase on national security grounds, maybe you could try voiding other things on other grounds. How are they interpreting things like this?
Well, that's a very good question and a very sensitive one, but let me just put it in this way. In Japan, people think that was a bad timing. Yeah. So I think it is an outlier case because of its company with the name of Nippon on the one hand and the company with the name of the US on the other. So that's pretty much a national, it just, scratch this national pride kind of thing. Yep. So I think that's one the exceptional case. Second, this is an election year, and it's in the U.S. Steel is based in Western Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a battleground state, and the third point is that it's the labor union. So the labor union is against it. I don't know why, but there were initial communication between the Nippon Steel and United Steelworkers were very much going bad. I think it was a failure of the communication, and I think it should have done because of the political sensitivity. Yeah. I mean, if in the battleground states, the few thousand votes may be decisive. Exactly. So I think, the Nippon Steel needs to be more careful and calculate more and take this, geopolitical or political situation into account for their investment timing. So I think in Japan, many sees that this is a very outlier case, very unique case that doesn't happen often. Yeah. However, you were right that this is showing that the United States can prevent any investment for any grounds. I mean, CFIUS, the Committee of Foreign Investment in the United States, is a very powerful tool for blocking the foreign direct investment into the United States. However, it doesn't really have the economic rationale. Right. I mean, stopping the Nippon Steel investing in U.S. Steel. I mean, Nippon Steel investment in U.S. Steel is, I think it's a right decision in the normal circumstances. I mean, it will improve the productivity. It will, the reform and Nippon Steel promise to protect the employment so that the existing employment will not be laid off. And I think there are a number of commitments of the Nippon Steel on U.S. Steel, and I think economically, I think this is beneficial for United States, but because of these electoral reasons, I think it was blocked. So I think as long as there is a reasonable economic rationale behind it, I don't think that the United States is exercising or abusing those the investment screening procedures. But we always have to be aware that there is always the sort of the tool in the box.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful that this tool is not going to be out of the box. So try to do more careful negotiation with the labor union. You need to work with Washington D.C., the regulatory agencies, and also Congress. You have to do a lot of prepared. You need to do a preparatory work to make sure that your investment is going to be successful. I think that's kind of additional cost for the government, for the companies, so that I think it discourages the investment in the United States. But I think this is some sort of I think this is a sort of a managerial decision by the companies. If there is some benefit beyond that cost, then the company will do that anyway. So if they make a decision not to invest because of that such heavy cost that it incurs to the company, then company says okay not to do it. But there is always incentives for like the CHIPS Act or the IRA. There is always an incentive for the Japanese companies to invest in the United States. So it's always the decision of the company. What do you see, the cost or the benefits?
So just stepping away from the United States for a moment, what can Japan do in terms of its international economic strategy the way that Abe did during his administration with resurrecting CPTPP, participating in RCEP, all the other initiatives in economic connectivity that they engaged in, sort of independent from a lot of U.S. efforts. So beyond the United States, what can Japan do? What could Japan do? Regardless of who wins in, whenever they call the election.
Right. Well, I think the world is becoming as the sort of bipolar world, not exactly a polar, but I think the world has two groups of countries. One is that those who seek their own interest and exercising their powers, not only the military power, but also economic, regulatory power to shape the international order, such as the United States using these measures to, prevent the transfer of technology, like
advanced semiconductors.
Semiconductor. And the China, which is also using the regulatory power to control the export of the graphite, the gallium, germanium, etc., etc. So, and also using military forces like Russia,
right,
or probably Israel. So these are the countries where people, those countries think that you can go beyond the law, or you can be above the law to maximize your interests. Right. So typical, classical realist type of countries. Whereas there are a lot of countries which benefited from the countries, the international order with the rule-based international order. So I think Japan is one of those. Yeah. And if you exclude United States and China from the international market, then Japan is one of the largest market in the world.
Yep.
And Japan can be a leader of those who want to maintain the rule-based international order.
Right.
So what Japan can do is to form a coalition of willing who are willing to maintain the rule-based international order, although we cannot, we cannot maintain the WTO rules because it's no longer working. So we need to create some sort of a minilateral, the plurilateral mechanisms to make sure that we are playing inside the game, inside the rules, and we have to deal with the collectively against those countries which are exercising the power to maximize their interests. So I think Japan, CPTPP was a good example.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Mr. Ishiba is capable of doing that sort of a similar kind of thing, but I think the experience during the Abe administration for reforming or reshaping the TPP into a CPTPP was perhaps a very good example that we can maintain the rule-based international order without the United States. So no matter who becomes as the president of the United States, we will be able to commit ourselves to the rule-based international order and showing our willingness to be the leader of it.
Okay, last question. I've been asking everyone to get on record with their prediction. What happens, now I can't say what's going to happen on November 5th because we're probably not going to have a decision then. Who is standing on the west portico of the U.S. Capitol building taking the oath of office on January 20th?
It's very hard. Again, the U.S. Electoral College system makes it very hard to predict because of the battleground states. There was an excitement when the Biden stepped down and the Harris took over. There was a huge excitement because the Democrats thought that this is the sort of winning shot. But if you look at the numbers in the battleground state, they haven't really changed.
No.
Of course, there was an excitement in New York or California, but not in Pennsylvania, Michigan, or even the states like Arizona or Georgia. The Trump is slightly ahead of Harris. So we don't know, but my bet, if I do, my bet is going to Harris.
Okay. Dr. Kazuto Suzuki, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.